There's no warning, just a sudden shift where the sea turns violent. This is the Drake Passage. The most unpredictable stretch of ocean on Earth. Between South America and Antarctica, 3 oceans collide, creating towering waves, screaming winds, and deadly currents. Known as the sailor's graveyard, it remains treacherous, even with modern tech. But what makes it so deadly? In this deep dive, we'll explore why the Drake Passage still haunts those brave enough to cross it. The most dangerous waters on Earth, the Drake Passage. The Drake Passage has terrified sailors for centuries. It is not marked by gates, cliffs, or fortresses. It's just water, endless, raging, unbroken water. But that's precisely what makes it so dangerous. Every ship heading to Antarctica must cross it, and the ocean shows no mercy. There are no shortcuts, no alternatives, just 600 miles of turbulent sea standing between the southern tip of South America and the Antarctic Peninsula. This isn't just another body of water. It's a relentless test, one that over 800 ships have failed to survive. More than 10,000 sailors lost their lives trying to cross. The Drake Passage doesn't just challenge vessels, it breaks them. And yet, to understand why, you have to look beneath the waves. To the north of the passage sits Cape Horn, Chile, infamous in its own right for deadly swells and gale-force winds. To the south, the remote South Shetland Islands mark the beginning of Antarctic territory. This narrow strip of ocean is the shortest distance between Antarctica and another continent, but it's far more than a line on a map. It's where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet and exchange water in an unpredictable fury. The Drake Passage is the only place on Earth where water from all major oceans, Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian, can flow freely around the planet. This isn't a casual exchange of tides. It's a massive circulation system that plays a central role in global climate. Beneath the surface churns the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the most powerful ocean current on Earth. This current barrels west to east without interruption. With no continental landmass to slow it down, it sweeps cold water around the frozen continent and up into other seas. It regulates temperatures, drives weather patterns, and sustains ecosystems on a planetary scale. But for the ships passing through the Drake Passage, this current is the architect of chaos. Antarctica and South America weren't always separate. Millions of years ago, they were connected by a land bridge. But as tectonic plates shifted and collided, that landmass slowly tore apart. As the rift grew wider, seawater surged into the opening, carving out what would become the Drake Passage. With the new channel open, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current was born. It flowed freely, circling the globe and isolating Antarctica from warmer waters to the north. This isolation allowed ice sheets to grow, locking Antarctica in a deep freeze and altering Earth's entire climate system. But what helped reshape the planet's atmosphere also created a violent sea corridor with no equal. Through this bottleneck, storms gather and explode. Waves build in speed and size, rising to heights of over 40 feet. The temperature can plunge within minutes. Icebergs drift silently beneath the surface, and wind gusts howl with hurricane force. Crossing the Drake Passage isn't just about endurance, it's about survival. Contrary to popular belief, Sir Francis Drake did not discover the passage named after him. That first encounter likely belonged to Spanish navigator Francisco de Hoces in 1525. While sailing south from the Strait of Magellan, de Hoces' ship was blown off course by brutal winds, revealing an uncharted stretch of open water. It was a pivotal moment. It suggested, for the first time, that South America might not be linked to a great southern continent. Spanish explorers dubbed it the Mar de Hoces, but the name never stuck. Decades later, in 1578, Francis Drake found himself in similar circumstances. A storm pushed his fleet southward, accidentally exposing them to the same wild ocean. One of his ships, the Marigold, was lost to the waves. Drake's encounter, well documented and widely shared, cemented his name on the map. From that point forward, the Drake Passage became synonymous with danger. Its reputation spread like wildfire among seafarers, and rightly so. Wind speeds regularly exceed 80 miles per hour. The temperature rarely rises above freezing, and the nearest coastlines offer little refuge. For early explorers, getting caught in the Drake's grip meant almost certain doom. But the question remains, why do we still risk the crossing? What's waiting on the other side that's worth the peril? Despite its ferocity, the Drake Passage is the only path to Antarctica for ocean-going vessels. Cruise ships, scientific expeditions, and icebreakers must all brave these waters to reach the frozen continent. It's a rite of passage, a challenge that commands respect and caution from even the most seasoned sailors. For modern travelers, the journey across the Drake can last 2 days. Seasickness is common, so is dread. But when the storms break and the white cliffs of Antarctica appear on the horizon, survivors speak of it as a transformation, like passing through a portal into another world. The Drake Passage acts as a barrier that shields the last wild place on Earth. It keeps Antarctica remote, untouched, and largely free from mass tourism and overdevelopment. In many ways, its danger has preserved the purity of the continent. The Drake Passage isn't just a natural hazard. It's a living force that continues to influence global systems. Oceanographers study its currents to understand climate shifts. Biologists examine its nutrient-rich waters that fuel entire food chains. And world powers monitor it as a strategic choke point for naval movement and polar research. In a time when so much of the world feels tamed and charted, the Drake Passage remains a wild frontier. It reminds us that nature does not answer to us. We answer to it. Whether you're a modern explorer, a scientist, or a curious traveler, crossing the Drake means confronting the full power of Earth's oceans. And if you're lucky enough to make it through, you walk away changed. Drake's unintended discovery. In 1578, English privateer Sir Francis Drake sailed into the Strait of Magellan with 3 ships, the Marigold, the Elizabeth, and his flagship, the Golden Hind. As they pushed into the Pacific, the sea turned on them. A violent storm shattered the fleet's cohesion, ripping them southward into unknown waters. The Marigold succumbed to the chaos and was lost. The Elizabeth, battered and disoriented, turned back. Only the Golden Hind fought through, surviving the onslaught and emerging into the open ocean. Drake had not intended to chart these waters, but the storm forced his hand. What he discovered proved invaluable. Until then, no English vessel had confirmed the presence of an open sea beneath South America. This accidental detour offered proof, clear, salty, and treacherous, that another ocean route existed. Though Drake never deliberately sailed the narrowest stretch now bearing his name, his passage etched a new possibility into the maritime imagination of European powers. Decades later, in 1616, a Dutch mariner named Willem Schouten made the first intentional voyage through the Drake Passage. He sailed around Cape Horn, bypassing the treacherous Strait of Magellan, and opened a path into the Pacific that would redefine global trade and exploration. His successful crossing didn't just rewrite maps, it unlocked a door into a roaring, ice-laced gauntlet that only the bold would dare attempt. Ships that dare cross the Drake Passage don't face a single enemy. They face 4, all working together in chaotic harmony. First, the wind. With no landmass to slow its rush, the wind circles the Earth unchallenged, accelerating across the Southern Ocean until it becomes a living force. Gusts scream at over 70 miles per hour, slamming into sails and decks like fists of cold steel. Next come the waves. These winds whip the sea into towering giants, walls of water reaching 30 feet high. In extreme cases, they grow even larger, nearly 65 feet tall, rising and crashing like watery skyscrapers. Each crest threatens to swallow a vessel whole, and each trough feels like a fall into the Earth's pit. Then, the currents. The Antarctic circumpolar current doesn't flow lazily. It surges, squeezing through the narrow gap between continents with a kind of vengeance. This flow creates spiraling eddies that drag ships off course, sometimes spinning them violently sideways. And still, that's not the end. Ice floats in from the south. Icebergs the size of cities, carved from Antarctica's frozen edge and pushed north by the same currents that hammer ships from below. Each berg turns navigation into a life-or-death calculation. One misjudgment, and steel buckles under frozen weight. But the most dangerous part, all of these elements, wind, wave, current, and ice, often strike at once, creating a fury that few ships can withstand. Wrecked in the wilderness. Long before satellites tracked storms or radar painted pictures of nearby hazards, sailors ventured into these waters armed only with instinct, grit, and wooden hulls. For many, that was not enough. In 1741, the British naval ship HMS Wager attempted the crossing during a Pacific expedition. As it neared Cape Horn and entered the Drake Passage, the ship became separated from its fleet. Brutal weather pummeled the Wager, tearing at its rigging and threatening to smash it into splinters. Finally, waves and wind forced it ashore on the wild coast of southern Chile. What followed was not a rescue, it was collapse. Discipline disintegrated. The crew, hungry, freezing, and leaderless, fractured into factions. Mutiny brewed in the wreck's shadow. Arguments over command turned into violence. Plans to escape became desperate gambles. And one by one, the men disappeared, swallowed by the land, the sea, or each other. Of the 120 sailors who had departed England, only 10 returned. The wreck of the Wager stands not just as a tragedy of the sea, but as a human breakdown, ignited by isolation, starvation, and the wrath of the Drake. The vanishing of the Santelmo. If the HMS Wager haunts the northern edge of the passage, then the Santelmo haunts the south. In 1819, this Spanish warship departed Buenos Aires bound for Montevideo with over 600 men aboard. As the vessel pressed into the latitudes of the Drake Passage, weather descended like a hammer. The ship encountered a storm so severe, it likely never escaped it. The last sighting of the Santelmo came near the South Shetland Islands, close to the Antarctic coast. After that, silence. No distress signals, no floating debris, just cold, wind, and water. More than 640 souls vanished into the Southern Ocean. To this day, no confirmed wreckage has ever surfaced, and yet legends persist. Some believe fragments of the ship washed ashore on the Shetlands. Others say faint traces, buttons, cloth, have been found embedded in the ice. But no proof, only questions. Did they try to land? Did they freeze? Did any survive? The Santelmo remains Antarctica's oldest ghost, a vessel erased by the very passage it dared to cross. As the 19th century came to a close, another ship approached the Drake Passage, but this time it didn't carry empire or war, it carried science. In 1897, the Belgica, a Belgian research vessel, set out from Antwerp for Antarctica. Its crew included adventurers, sailors, and scientists, all determined to document one of the last untouched places on Earth. The Belgica didn't just sail through the passage, it became the first scientific expedition to overwinter in Antarctica, enduring months of darkness, illness, and isolation. Its crew faced madness and frostbite, yet their research laid the groundwork for future polar studies. They were no longer just passing through the Drake, they were trying to understand it, and in doing so, they gave the world its first glimpse into the psychology of surviving the extremes, not just the wind and ice, but the silence, the darkness, the waiting. Inside the Drake Passage, Earth's most treacherous waters, the Drake Passage has been feared for centuries. It's where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans collide, creating a maelstrom of chaos between Cape Horn and the South Shetland Islands. Waves here aren't just tall, they're monsters. Swells can reach 40 feet, winds scream at over 70 knots, and the currents rip through with unchecked fury. For ships heading to Antarctica, it's the one place no navigator can truly tame, a watery gauntlet that has tested every soul daring enough to cross it. After braving the brutal waters of the Drake Passage, one crew pushed deeper into the unknown. Aboard the Belgica, a Belgian expedition led by Adrien de Gerlache in 1897. What started as a mission of science and discovery soon devolved into something far more primal, a battle for survival against nature's most relentless forces. Caught off the coast of the Antarctic Peninsula, the Belgica became locked in thick sea ice. The ship, designed to endure storms, was no match for the frozen grip of the Southern Ocean. It couldn't move. It couldn't break free. It was completely trapped. Among the crew were two men whose names would later be etched into polar history: Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen and American physician Dr. Frederick Cook. As the polar night set in, plunging the crew into months of total darkness, their ordeal began. The temperature dropped below minus 30 degrees Celsius. Sunlight vanished. The endless black gnawed away at their sanity. Hunger, hopelessness, and hallucinations began to take hold. Two men succumbed to the elements. The rest teetered on the edge of madness. Cook knew he had to act. Using little more than intuition and desperation, he forced the men to adopt a routine, to move, to fight the urge to surrender. He insisted they eat raw penguin and seal meat, disgusting, but rich in vitamin C. It staved off scurvy, and it saved lives. His improvised treatments are now considered some of the earliest examples of polar survival medicine. When the sun finally returned in early 1899, the ice still hadn't released its grip. So the crew began to dig. With saws, picks, and even explosives, the Belgica's crew hacked their way through more than a mile of ice, inch by inch. For weeks, they fought the frozen barrier that had nearly become their tomb. Then, like something out of myth, the ship finally broke free. Battered, but afloat. The Belgica made it back to civilization, carrying stories that would haunt and inspire generations. But their saga was only the beginning. One of the most harrowing tales tied to the Drake Passage unfolded 2 decades later, in 1914, when Sir Ernest Shackleton set out on the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. His goal was ambitious: to cross the entire Antarctic continent on foot. A bold mission, maybe too bold. Because the Endurance, Shackleton's ship, never even reached the shore. Trapped in the Weddell Sea, the Endurance was crushed by the relentless ice in early 1915. It didn't sink quickly. It groaned, splintered, and finally disappeared beneath the surface, leaving Shackleton and his 27 men alone, stranded and surrounded by nothing but white death. For months they survived on floating sea ice. They built makeshift camps. They hunted seals and penguins. They waited and waited. But rescue never came. Eventually, the ice they were resting on began to break apart. The crew made a desperate dash in lifeboats to Elephant Island, a desolate, uninhabited rock surrounded by violent seas. It was barely land, but it was hope. From there, Shackleton knew their only chance of survival was to cross the Drake Passage in a 22-foot lifeboat. The James Caird was not a vessel designed for deep ocean crossings. No engine, no radio, just sails, a compass, and 6 men led by a commander who refused to die. The journey took 16 days through the worst sea in the world. They battled walls of water and freezing rain. Ice formed in the boat. They bailed it out by hand. Sleep was impossible. And yet, they made it, landing on the southern coast of South Georgia Island, emaciated but alive. The island's whaling station was on the opposite coast, and to get there, Shackleton and 2 others had to climb over a mountain range no human had ever crossed. They did it without proper gear or maps, climbing with ropes and nails hammered into their boots. When they staggered into the whaling station days later, ragged and frozen, the manager burst into tears. Shackleton had returned. He didn't stop to rest. Within days, he began the mission to rescue the rest of his men. It took 4 attempts, but on August 30th, 1916, all 22 men left on Elephant Island were brought home. Not a single life lost. Shackleton's impossible voyage across the Drake Passage is now considered one of the greatest survival stories in history. Even today, with GPS, satellite communications, and icebreakers, the Drake Passage remains one of the most feared stretches of water on Earth. Ships crossing between South America and Antarctica often face 30-foot waves, sudden storms, and swirling whirlpools of current. Despite our advances, nature still holds the upper hand here. Vessels capsize, crews vanish. In the past decade alone, multiple expeditions have faced life-threatening emergencies in these same waters, reminding us that Shackleton's ghost still haunts the passage. Every crossing of the Drake is a gamble. For scientists, explorers, and thrill-seekers, it's the price you pay for setting foot on the last true wilderness on Earth. But for those who read the logs of the Belgica, the diary entries of Shackleton, or seen the hollowed eyes of modern mariners who braved the crossing, one truth remains. The Drake Passage does not forgive mistakes. It doesn't matter who you are. Once you enter these waters, your fate belongs to the sea. The Drake Passage, nature's ultimate proving ground. In 2022, a tragedy struck the Drake Passage that reminded the world why this stretch of water is considered one of the most dangerous places on Earth. The Viking Polaris, a modern cruise ship specifically designed with reinforced hulls to handle icy waters, was blindsided by a towering wall of water. It was a rogue wave, 16 meters high, that crashed into the vessel with such force it shattered the windows of passenger cabins. The impact injured several passengers, and tragically, it took the life of a 62-year-old woman. This wasn't a storm. There was no cyclone on the radar. No warning system sounded the alarm. Rogue waves don't play by any rules. They rise from calm seas like giants, hitting with the power of a freight train before vanishing as quickly as they came. These phenomena are rare, but in the Drake Passage, they are just another chapter in the region's long, violent story. Despite all of humanity's technological advancements, satellite tracking, reinforced vessels, predictive software, the ocean here still holds the upper hand. Even in the 21st century, the Drake Passage remains unpredictable and unforgiving. Yet ships continue to cross it every year. Scientists, explorers, commercial vessels and cruise liners all drawn to the edge of the world, hoping to pass through one of the harshest and most temperamental bodies of water on the planet. But the Drake Passage isn't just dangerous for the sake of legend. It's not merely the site of thrilling maritime tales or historic feats of survival. This region plays a fundamental role in the balance of the entire Earth's climate system. It may look like just another stretch of ocean on the map, but it's one of the planet's most critical corridors. Situated between the southern tip of South America and the Antarctic Peninsula, the Drake Passage is the narrowest choke point for the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the most powerful ocean current on Earth. This current connects the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans and moves more water than all the Earth's rivers combined. It's this relentless flow that allows cold, oxygen-rich water from Antarctica to mix with warmer waters from the north. That mixing isn't just an oceanographic curiosity. It's the engine that helps drive Earth's global conveyor belt of ocean circulation. Without this process, the consequences would be catastrophic. The planet's temperature would become erratic, heating unevenly, throwing climate patterns into chaos. Regions that rely on temperate weather systems for agriculture would face extreme droughts or flooding. Coastal fisheries, dependent on nutrient-rich waters stirred up by deep-sea mixing, could collapse. Ecosystems, from the Arctic to the equator, would unravel. In essence, this narrow stretch of ocean, with its howling winds and killer waves, acts as a planetary thermostat. That's why research vessels are constantly collecting data here, measuring salinity, monitoring temperature shifts, studying currents and plankton populations. The Drake is a natural laboratory where climate scientists and marine biologists battle brutal conditions to extract the data that keeps our planet's predictive models functioning. It's also a lifeline for Antarctic research stations. Every supply run, every personnel transfer has to brave the Drake. At the heart of the Southern Ocean's food web is krill, tiny crustaceans that thrive in these nutrient-dense waters. They may be small, but they're everything to this ecosystem. Whales, seals, penguins, and fish all depend on krill. So when researchers venture into these waters, they're not just here for temperature logs or ice cores. They're trying to track the health of a system that affects species on every continent. But the Drake Passage is not reserved for scientists alone. Every year, thousands of tourists embark on the journey from Ushuaia, Argentina, the southernmost city in the world, across this brutal sea, bound for Antarctica. It's a voyage that takes about 48 hours under good conditions, though good is a relative term. If the water is unusually calm, travelers joke that they've gotten the Drake Lake. But when the winds whip up and the waves crash like they usually do, it becomes the Drake Shake. Seasickness runs rampant. Every meal is a challenge. Sleep becomes impossible. And yet, they endure it. Because the reward at the end of the passage is something that defies description. The chance to step foot on Antarctica, the last truly untouched continent. A place where human noise falls away and silence dominates, where penguins outnumber people and glaciers stretch beyond the horizon. For the captains guiding these ships, each crossing is a high-stakes equation. They pore over satellite data, scan barometric pressure, wind charts, ocean swell patterns, and ice forecasts. The decisions they make in those moments, when to depart, how to route the course, can mean the difference between a smooth passage and disaster. Even the most seasoned seafarers know that in the Drake, overconfidence is punished. It's more than a navigational challenge, it's a psychological one. The Drake Passage is a proving ground for the human spirit. For centuries, it has shaped stories of failure and triumph, loss and survival. From early explorers like James Cook, who dared to map these waters, to the cruise passengers of today who just want to see a penguin up close. Everyone who enters the Drake does so with the knowledge that they may not come out unchanged. Because the truth is, no one masters the Drake Passage. It cannot be tamed or conquered. It can't be predicted like other waterways or managed with the arrogance of modern technology. It is a place of extremes, violent, beautiful, and utterly indifferent to human ambition. And yet, it is absolutely essential. It connects continents. It circulates oceans. It regulates climate. It is a lifeline and a threat. A riddle that we must solve, but never fully will. Every successful crossing is a whisper of cooperation from nature. Every failure is a reminder of how much we still don't understand. In the end, whether you're a tourist looking for adventure, a scientist chasing answers, or a captain steering through the unknown, one rule remains: you don't conquer the Drake Passage. At best, you survive it. Modern challenges and scientific significance of the Drake Passage. The Drake Passage, a brutal expanse of ocean between South America's Cape Horn and the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica, continues to push the limits of both maritime navigation and scientific exploration. Sailors and researchers alike still regard this stretch of water as one of Earth's most volatile natural obstacles. The absence of nearby land masses, the relentless power of converging ocean systems, and the region's unpredictable weather combine to make it one of the most unforgiving places on the planet. Even with today's advanced maritime technology, the Drake Passage still refuses to be tamed. Ships that sail between continents face more than just rough waters. They face a true environmental gauntlet. The Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Oceans all converge here, funneling their immense energy into one narrow corridor. That collision of waters fuels the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, or ACC, which surges through the passage with unrelenting force. Ships equipped with high-end navigation systems and modern stabilizers still find themselves at the mercy of the region's infamous conditions. Sailors have given it the nickname Drake Shake for a reason. Waves frequently reach 30 feet and have even climbed as high as 60 feet. Winds scream across the water, often exceeding 70 miles per hour. These punishing conditions continue to challenge both human resolve and machine endurance. Crossing the Drake Passage has never been a casual endeavor. It demands vigilance, experience, and respect. While sailors struggle to cross it, scientists see the Drake Passage as one of the most valuable windows into Earth's climate system. The ACC, which flows without interruption around Antarctica, plays a major role in distributing heat and regulating global temperatures. Its presence helps cool the planet by isolating Antarctica's ice sheet from warmer ocean waters to the north, and by circulating massive volumes of water that transport nutrients and carbon dioxide. Research vessels that brave the Drake Passage collect crucial data on these movements. Scientists track how much carbon the ocean draws down from the atmosphere and measure how water temperatures shift over time. They also study how marine life survives in such turbulent, nutrient-rich waters, gaining insights into biodiversity and ecological resilience. The data gathered here doesn't just help understand the Southern Ocean. It helps scientists model the entire planet's climate future. The passage also acts as a kind of natural filter where surface waters sink deep into the ocean. This sinking process stores carbon-rich water far below the surface for centuries, making the Drake Passage one of the planet's most effective carbon sinks. Without this phenomenon, global carbon levels would rise faster, worsening the already urgent climate crisis. But the very process that makes the Drake Passage scientifically vital also makes it vulnerable. As global temperatures rise, Antarctica continues to shed ice into the ocean. The increased glacial melt introduces vast quantities of fresh water into the Southern Ocean, disrupting salinity levels and affecting how ocean layers mix and circulate. When the structure of the ACC changes, even slightly, it can send ripples through global weather patterns. The flow might weaken, shift, or interact differently with other ocean currents, with consequences that reach far beyond the Southern Hemisphere. This change also threatens the passage's function as a carbon sink, and by extension, our ability to naturally regulate atmospheric carbon levels. In parallel, sea ice around Antarctica has begun to form later and melt earlier each year, shifting the habitat range of many marine species. These changes disrupt delicate food webs and migration cycles, threatening both predators and prey in one of Earth's most biologically rich marine ecosystems. The Drake Passage stands as a rare meeting point between raw nature and cutting-edge science. Its waters test modern ships and seasoned sailors just as they challenged explorers centuries ago. Yet, this same stretch of turbulent ocean offers scientists a unique vantage point to understand the climate systems that govern life across the globe. As climate change accelerates, the Drake Passage becomes even more important. It is no longer just a dangerous route to navigate. It is a dynamic, high-stakes research site that may hold answers to some of our most pressing environmental questions. And while the storms, swells, and winds will always make it a treacherous crossing, they also serve as a constant reminder of the planet's power and our need to understand it before it's too late. Alright, so that's it for this video. And if you want to watch more amazing content like this, check out some of our other videos. Bye.